Hi, I'm Bolahano Gumbayo, and we're at ACC-17. And I have with me Dr. Clyde Yancy, who is the Chief of Cardiology at Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine, as well as the Dean of Diversity and Inclusion. You're very welcome, Dr. Yancy.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much, Balahan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yancy. My first question pertains to ABC Fits on the Go, and by ABC I mean Association for Black Cardiologists. And our first question is, as the Dean of Diversity and Inclusion, what are your insights as to where we are as a community as far as diversity in the field of cardiology research?
So, Balahan, the first observation is to listen to what you just said. This is the first time of which I've been aware that there has been a cohort within FITS, and I've been working with fellows in training for a long time now, that is self-described as being concomitantly or uniquely aligned with the ABC. The mere fact that there is a sufficient mass of fellows in training, FIT, that also have ownership or claim or affiliate with ABC represents huge progress. I'm going to divulge my age here, but my very first major medical meeting was in 1987. I was in Anaheim, California at the American Heart Association meeting. And I heard by word of mouth that there was going to be a meeting of the Association of Black Cardiologists. And as a fellow, I did a little bit of recon to figure out, okay, who is that, where are they, and what's going on? It was in a small hotel room, not even 50 people, and the structure was still very much nascent. Now, come from 1987 to 2017, so we're talking, 30 years later?
30 years, yeah.
And we have ABC members as a part of FIT. That, I think, is a major step forward. So let's pause and acknowledge that. Now, your question is a good question. I would say that my response is no different for the ABC FIT than for any other FIT. You have to pursue a passion. You have to be willing to make a commitment. And you have to be willing to be unbridled in your interests. There's no reason why an ABC fellow should assume that his or her responsibility is to become an investigator in disparities. That is not at all correct. I spent the majority of my career investigating heart failure, and along the way took an interest in heart failure special populations. But I didn't start out, nor is that the reason that I'm positioned where I am professionally, that I started to take a closer look at issues relating to different groups of people. So I think the important thing is to realize that we, now speaking as a chief of cardiology, we are very emboldened by your presence, and we very much want you to be successful. And it's not just me speaking, but I'm speaking on behalf of all the other chiefs of cardiology. If you do one half step forward and say, I'm interested in science, and I'd like to work with a mentor, and I'd like to discover the right path to follow to potentially develop a career as a basic translational outcomes or clinical or clinician scientist, all of us would stop what we're doing and enable that. And so for all the enthusiasm I have about the fellow in training program, I would double down for the ABC fellow within FIT, because whereas we had high inertia bars to overcome when I was a fellow, we have open doors for you to walk through as you are a fellow. You simply have to take that half step forward and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this, and let everything else come together. But this is a great time for you and your immediate peers to be completely engaged with developing your professional skills.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yancy. Switching gears a little bit, I know you have a deep passion about disparity in healthcare, and I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit, telling us about the state you think we are in the cardiology community in terms of this particular aspect or subject.
So that's obviously a pretty involved question and merits a pretty involved answer, but I'll be precise and say we have at least raised awareness. There are very few practitioners and certainly virtually no persons in academic cardiology that are not aware of very important gender-related, ethnicity-related, and race-related issues regarding cardiovascular disease, outcomes, and how we practice. Awareness is a huge first step. We already have some early evidence of strategies that work. Quality improvement always works. It's trite, but it's correct. A rising tide raises all boats. And so if we take a quality approach for all the patients we see, then all groups benefit. The more exciting part, though, is what happens when we revisit these issues about group differences and look less at the group per se and look more at a more rigorously obtained biological profile that almost obviates the issue of race. That is to say, looking at omics, genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, gives you much more precision about why two people, regardless of their race or ethnicity, may respond to things differently. But we must be very aware. We cannot assume that precision medicine will completely obviate the discussions about race and ethnicity, because bias is always going to be a factor in the equation, and maybe even some subtle racism. So we have to be ever conscious that in addition to what we can measure and what we can compute, there are things that we can't measure and things that we can't compute that still impact outcomes. So it's an interesting space, much more interesting now than it used to be, because some of the initial big steps have been taken, but the awareness piece is done. We have some early strategies that are successful, particularly taking a quality-focused approach. That's ongoing. And the future is very bright, both because we can represent what we think we know now with more precision, using more careful descriptors of groups, and going forward, we can recognize when bias is at play and develop ways to deal with that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yancy.
All right.
Thank you. And for more information, you can go on to youtube.com/feetsonthego.